The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on the day Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. We head into the All-Star break with trade prospects, guys that are probably going to get traded that you should consider trying to get on your fantasy team. We'll also talk about the latest Major League Baseball news, the council curse, and the waiver wire ads and drops. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. Play ball! Welcome in to today's edition of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show, presented by BellyUpFantasySports.com, Righteous Felon Jerky, and Seat Geek. It is a beautiful day for baseball because, well, we're taking a little break and heading into the All-Star game this week. We'll add some fun, adventurous things as well. So, at the end of the day, we're just going to keep talking fantasy baseball. I'm your host, Vince Stover. I am joined, as I am every single week, by the Belly Up Fantasy Sports All-Star, the one and only Kevin Wilson. Hey, Kev, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's been a busy weekend for me, as you're well aware. You know, we talked baseball yesterday. We're talking baseball today. So we're wall-to-wall baseball, and, you know, there are a few things that make me happier than talking baseball. So I'm doing extraordinarily well.
Yeah, so if you weren't aware, Saturday night on the Belly Up Sports YouTube channel, we hosted the mid-season Super Show for Major League Baseball. And so you can go back. We went division by division and looked at different things there and had lots of guests on as well. So go to the Belly Up Sports YouTube page. You can find that whole program there as well. And, you know, it's a fun time of year, Kevin, as we head into the All-Star break. Along with the All-Star break comes trade speculation. So we're going to focus on some of that today in our very first segment that we call the Fantasy Burner. The Fantasy Burner segment is presented by Seat Geek. It's your one-stop shop for all tickets that you need, whether they're concerts, ball games, whatever it may be. You can get them at SeatGeek.com. And if you use the code BellyUpSports, you're going to get $20 off your purchase. Again, that's SeatGeek.com. The code is BellyUpSports. So, Kevin, we're taking a look at players that are on the trade market that we're looking at as a fantasy perspective, saying if they get moved, they could be a quality player on your team. I would guess in most cases with these players, they're still players that are currently rostered, so you're going to have to go make a move for them. But now's the time to make the move before they get traded, so that when they get traded, you're sitting on the right end of that trade. And I've got a list of about, 13 guys, 12 guys, 14 guys, something like that I think it's a good chance they could get traded. And I'm curious to kind of see, I know we talked a little bit yesterday just after the show about you're intrigued to see what the list looks like. We're going to go with this. So I'm going to let you start us off with a player or two that you think are worth taking a swing at now because they could get traded this week or next.
All right. So I've got a few players listed here as well. We could have probably expanded the list further, but there are more teams in contention this year. So I pretty much narrowed down to the outposts that are the Chicago White Sox, Miami, Los Angeles Angels, and Colorado.
Okay.
Just for interest's sake. But the player that I'm going to lead off with is one that happens to be on my team.
Okay.
And that's Luis Robert of the Chicago White Sox. So we all know the injury history with this guy. He was injured earlier in the season, but he has been on the roster since June 1st now. And so he has been healthy. He had 3 hits today and hits in 12 of his last 16 games. He's got 8 stolen bases in July alone. So he's shown that his legs are healthy. And he's still only 26 years old, and I don't see any reason why the White Sox would hold on to him. They're probably saying, well, let's get what we can while he's healthy because he'll break down by August 20th or so. So he goes right to the top of my list. There are teams that need a bat and in the outfield, so I really think that we could talk multiple players on Chicago. I'm sure we will, but Lewis Robert goes right to the top of my list.
And what's crazy is the team that he's being linked to right now is the Phillies. And so if he ends up in Philadelphia, you add him to a loaded lineup already. I mean, that's a guy, if he's in Philly, you're definitely excited to have him on a roster because
absolutely. Any team that's in contention, any team would boost his value through the roof.
Yeah, but if you put him on Philly with the lineup that's stacked, it doesn't matter where he bats at. He's surrounded by other good guys. You can go to a team that's in contention and still not be on necessarily a great lineup. But going to the Phillies, I mean, my goodness, that'd be quite the landing spot for him, for sure. So that's a great name. I've got him on my list as well, as a guy. Let me stick with the batters. I'm gonna give you a couple real quick. Cody Bellinger, we talked about him last night. I know not everybody was tuning in last night. He's with the Cubs, of course, right now. Astros and Mariners have been linked to him. Sounds like the Cubs are willing to let him go. And I think if you give him, especially in Houston, but even in Seattle, I think give him a move to, again, a team that's in contention. It maybe changes his motivation factor a little bit and makes him more fantasy relevant. Again, this year, just putting him in a spot that gets him excited to go to work every day, where the Cubs right now, it's just not that way. And then the other guy is Jazz Chisholm, and I'm not a Jazz Chisholm fan. I've never really been a Jazz Chisholm fan, but he's being linked to the Mariners, to the Yankees, those kinds of teams. I think if you can surround him in a decent lineup, then what he can give you changes a little bit than where he's at right now. First of all, we don't like batters in Miami really that much, and so you put him in a different park. I think that's a good thing too. I would think you can get Jazz Chisholm very, very cheap right now. I don't think you'd have to give up a whole lot. If he gets traded to the Yankees, then his value is going to go up, just in fantasy value goes. If he goes to the Mariners, I don't know. I think, anytime someone gets traded, the value goes up a little bit in the fantasy world. So now's the time. If you think they're worth taking a swing on, Cody Bellinger and Jazz, I'd have more confidence in Bellinger than Jazz Chisholm, but put him in the right spot. And, again, I think you have that revival in a sense where he's excited to be there and to go to work, and he's in a better lineup and a better ballpark and all these kinds of things. I wouldn't mind taking a shot with Jazz Chisholm if I could trade somebody I was already going to cut anyways. so that's kind of the value that I look at Jazz Chisholm, at least.
I agree with that, especially because you mentioned with the Yankees, and from what I've seen is that they want to make him play infield for them. And if that happens, then he really goes high up there on the list, because then you would add outfield, and I assume second base would probably, because he's played second base before, and he's got speed, 18 stolen bases. So if he goes in the Yankees, then I would like that a whole lot more than if he went to the Mariners.
Agreed.
So if you think there's any kind of way that he winds up on the Yankees, he's a player I'd definitely look into right now.
Any other offensive players on your list?
I have one.
Okay.
Well, one especially, but and that is when we switch over to the Colorado Rockies. All right. And teams that need catching help can look into Elias Diaz. And the reason why I say that is because, unlike his other teammates, he doesn't have this wild swing between home and road stats. Because he's a 300 hitter at home, which should surprise nobody. But he's also a 280 hitter on the road. So if he gets traded to a team, you don't have to worry as much about, he's coming out of the high, air and all that stuff. But another aspect of it, because last year he played in 141 games. So the catching position is always in flux in fantasy anyway. But if you can add a guy like that onto your team and he'll be in the lineup most days, that is a huge addition in my book. So,
all right. So let me counter that a little bit.
Okay. Counter me.
And here's the only reason I would say this is a catcher that gets traded to a good team is typically being traded to a team that has an average to above average catcher anyhow. And so they're actually still going to split a fair amount of time. In a lot of cases, it's an older catcher that they're just worried about health on, unless he can DH too, where he's going to be in the lineup regularly. I don't know that catchers get me super excited at the trade deadline because I think there's so many catchers out there that you can stream anyhow. Again, if he's going to DH so that he can be behind the plate one game, DH the next, that's one thing. I just feel like any team that Elias Diaz goes to, and he would be the catcher on the market that would be worth watching. I agree with you on that. I'm just not sure that I'm going to make a move for a catcher unless it's still one of those top three guys. I'm not sure there's enough fantasy value in it. But if you've been streaming catchers anyhow, and I've not seen – I know he's on the market. I've not seen which teams are tied to him. I don't know if you have or not.
I have not.
If you're already streaming catchers anyhow, then I think taking a shot at Diaz is a smart move. But if you've got a top 5 catcher in fantasy baseball, you're not going to get much out of Elias Diaz that you're not already getting. So I'm just a little bit more cautious on catchers. I get excited about trades. I think anytime someone gets traded, I'm willing to take a shot on most guys. But Diaz and any catcher really, I don't know. I guess for me, I fear kind of like relievers. I fear that if they get traded, their roles change a little bit. You get a closer for a bad team, gets traded to a good team. He usually becomes the setup man on the good team. The catcher that gets traded usually becomes a platoon guy behind the plate. And now they've got 2 guys they really like, but they're trying to keep them both fresh to a degree. And that's kind of why they bring him in there, and for security and things like that too. So, that would be my only counter to Elias Diaz. He is the only catcher I put on my list as well, as far as guys that are going to be on the market right now that's worth, if Logan O'Hoppe gets traded, I think there's things to watch out because he's been really good this year too, for the Angels. But Diaz is definitely the popular catcher name you're seeing right now out there in the trade market. And but again, I'm not sure where he ends up at. It seems like you're seeing a lot of the same teams in these trade rumors. But I'm not sure that those teams really need a catcher like Elias Diaz. So I'm interested to see what happens, see where he goes. The other name I got is Brent Rooker out in Oakland. He's obviously having
2 home runs today. So go ahead.
Yeah. He's having another good season. Obviously the A's aren't going anywhere. So other than Sacramento and Vegas. So, I think Brent Rooker's a guy to watch. He's now been pretty consistent over the last year and a half. So maybe he gets moved to a better team, puts him in a better situation. And he's already, I think, fantasy relevant. But then he becomes even more so on a decent team and a decent lineup too.
I agree with that. And because when it comes to Colorado and Oakland, I'm not too excited about any of the rest of their hitters.
Right.
And so those are the 2 guys that I would look at. And so when it comes to pitching side, there's all kinds of guys, especially when you consider my Dodgers, who don't have a healthy pitcher, it doesn't seem like.
Yeah.
So when it comes, we're talking starters, we're talking relievers here. And when it comes to the pitchers, there's a lot of pitchers we could talk about, but Tyler Anderson, we have discussed him multiple times on this show. So the Dodgers can make a phone call. It's not a long distance call. All right. They just pick up and say, hey. And when it comes to him, let's see, he's 34, and you wouldn't have to give up a lot, I would assume, to get him. Give up a couple prospects, and he's on your starting staff. But because he 2.97 ERA, 118 innings. So I like what he's doing over there in I'm going to call it Anaheim. They can call it LA all they want to, but it's Anaheim. But there are some better pitchers that might be on the move. But I like him, especially if he's a local guy for the Dodgers. If they just bring him over, and that would absolutely improve their pitching staff with just a couple guys named Otto or John or something, and their pitching staff is improved. So I like him.
I like it too. Yeah, I think we're going to see Anderson get moved. The question is where. I mean, he could go to the Dodgers. He could go to the Yankees. He could go a lot of different places. let me go through a couple of these just by team. Toronto, we talked about them a lot yesterday. They've really struggled. They haven't been good. They got 3 pitchers that I would assume at least one of them gets moved, if not 2 of them. Chris Bassett, Yasai Kikuchi, and Kevin Gossman. Looking at these guys, which one do you think is the most team friendly? Meaning a team that's looking to acquire a pitcher. That out of those 3, which one are you going for?
Well, Gossman, even though his name's Kevin, I don't trust him.
Sure.
So, and Yakutsky, or however you pronounce his name, I don't trust him either. So, Barrios, I guess, is what we're left with.
Bassett.
And Bassett, I'm sorry. So Bassett, I'm sorry. I was thinking Barrios because I tried him earlier. That didn't work out so well. But so Bassett, yes, he's a guy. He's a veteran. He's pitched in big games. So he's probably the guy that could bring in the biggest return. And so if you're going to look at a Toronto pitcher getting traded and get him on your staff, then he goes right to the top of that list.
Yeah, I agree. I think Chris Bassett's the guy you go for if you're going to make a trade for a Toronto pitcher, assuming he's going to get traded. I think Bassett's definitely the guy you go for here. Kikuchi's name is out there, and it's out there a fair amount. I think he's a little bit of an easier get for some teams. So when you look at teams like Milwaukee, who don't like to give up a whole lot, that's the kind of fit for them. For sure. So I think the Toronto guys, honestly, I think any of those 3, if they get moved, I think you're worth fantasy wise. If you can get them cheap, go for them. I think they're going to get better wherever they go. Again, you're looking at guys that are on low morale teams that are going to guys on high morale teams. And I don't care what you say, there is a difference. And so they get out there and I think you'll see improvement from them. Let's talk about the White Sox guys. Garrett Crochet and Eric Fetty are the 2 that everyone's talking about right now. I would love to see one of these guys in Milwaukee. I don't know that it's going to happen or not. But again, you got some talent, but it's some young talent. So why would the White Sox trade away the young talent when they're a rebuilding team? Anyhow, that's just the way baseball works. Fantasy-wise, obviously Garrett Crochet has been phenomenal, but Fetty's been good too. Which one do you think takes a better fantasy bump if they get moved?
A better fantasy bump to my mind, because I think Crochet's already up there. And I think Fetty is the guy who, because he's unlike Crochet, because Crochet's already hit his innings high in his career. And he's coming off Tommy John surgery. So other teams may be a little hesitant to make that move. But Fetty, he's pitched. I know he was, in Korea last year? But before that, he's got 2 seasons under his belt with at least 18 innings, at least. So you don't have to worry as much about his innings curve as much as you might with Crochet. So if I was to, and you wouldn't have to probably trade as much.
Agreed.
Whatever manager you're dealing with to get him. So I would put the check mark next to Eric Fetty. If I was to wanted to make a move on a pitcher on the White Sox, he goes to the top of my list.
All right, let me give you a few veterans now. Zach Eflin and Cal Quantrill, guys that have both had good moments, but then struggled. so different times in their careers, and the team wise is not great either. Let's talk about the fantasy aspect of it first. Eflin or Quantrill, which one would excite you more getting into a new location?
Well, Quantrill has pitched relatively well, even in Colorado. And once again, probably wouldn't have to give up a whole lot to get him. So I used him on my fantasy team. And unlike a lot of other pitchers who have just, pretty much bled all over the ground, he has pitched pretty well. So I would go for him first.
Yeah, Eflin kind of had his resurgence last year. And I think that maybe that was, I don't know, a little bit fortunate or whatever. So he may be, I would trust, again, depends on where they get traded, of course, as well. But to me, Cal Quantrill is the kind of guy that goes to a smaller market team. So whether it's back to Cleveland, to Milwaukee, those kinds of teams is what I would look at going for him. Eflin could have that potential to go, he's been in Philadelphia. You could see him going out west. You could see him going a lot of different places, even New York as well. Colorado-wise, Austin Gomber's another guy that I've got on my list, Kev. If he gets out of Colorado, I'd take a swing at him.
I would as well. And once again, it wouldn't take as much. He might even be on your waiver wire.
Right.
And so if he gets moved to another team, any team that gets him now will be a quality team.
Right.
He's out of Colorado. So if he's on your waiver wire and he gets traded, I would immediately go to my waiver wire and bring him onto my team, because it's a waiver ad. So there's no really, if he doesn't work out, okay, you just send him home. And so I like him because you don't have to give up anything to get him.
Awesome. That's pretty much my list. Who else do you have that we haven't
mentioned?
Okay,
just one other guy that we haven't talked. Oh, two guys actually, and that's on Miami. Tanner Scott is the relief pitcher down there. Okay, and it's pretty amazing because this guy has 6 wins and 14 saves. Yeah. So that accounts for 20. The Marlins have 33 victories. So he's accounted for 20 out of 33 wins for Miami.
Yeah.
So if he gets traded to another team, then his profile goes straight through the roof. And a guy that's most likely on your waiver wire, almost certainly, is Carlos Estevez of the Angels.
Yeah.
Who, despite a 1-3 record, he's got a 2.61 ERA. He's walked 4 guys all season long. 4. And that's it. All right. He last gave up a earned run on May 21st. So this guy he's a solid guy. Even if he goes to another team that's not the closer, in our league, we have the holds as a category. So right. I don't see him taking a big step back, if at all, because holds, if it's not a part of your league, you should really consider that going forward. But so those are the 2 relief pitchers. And I'm not big on relief pitchers, as you know, but if you are and you're searching for some relief guys that would boost your team after a trade, those 2 go right up there.
Yeah, and I'm careful. Again, I mentioned this earlier, and our league does have holds, but I understand that not everyone does. So I'm careful with that to make sure we note, in our league, you got a guy that even pitches in the 7th inning, you can get a hold. so you get these guys that are
in the 6th inning, you get a hold. So
yeah. So I mean, we're still getting value out of these relief pitchers that aren't closers. And honestly, it adds a lot to the league. I'm a proponent of it. I think you should have holds in your league. That being said, if your league doesn't have holds, you got to be really careful with these guys, because Scott, he's highly touted. He's this great relief pitcher. Everyone agrees with that. But if he gets traded to Baltimore, he's not going to close in Baltimore.
No.
And so if you don't have saves, then that doesn't help you any. If anything, you're going to go figure out who's going to get the saves for Miami now, and you're going to go tap into that maybe some more. So now, granted, I'm not picking up a guy that's going to get me saves in Miami, because he's not going to get very many.
No,
but
he might pitch once a week.
Just be careful. Just be careful with your relievers.
Know your league.
Yes.
If we're in July, you should know your league. So
you should. I agree. All right. So there you go. There's some trade prospects, guys that could get moved. And could get into better situations that's worth maybe reaching out to league owners now and trying to acquire a couple of these guys and put yourself in a better position. I'll tell you what I've done in our league, Kevin, is I've been scrounging off the injured list, getting some guys on the injured list. Like when they come back into play, if they're healthy come playoff time, my lineup should look pretty solid. Where I've got you drop Michael Harris a while back. I picked him up to see what happens with him. I got Tristan Cassis from Boston on my injured list right now. I picked up off a waiver wire. He's starting his rehab stuff. And then I acquired Mookie Betts in a trade a couple weeks ago as well. So I think it's good to play the long game if you can. Not everybody can. Sometimes you got to get the wins right now. Yeah. And if you got to get the wins now, you got to do what you got to do to get those wins for sure. So there you go. A couple things to think about for this week coming up and for the rest of the fantasy season. This has been the Fantasy Burner segment. It is presented by SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com. Use the code BellyUpSports. You're going to get $20 off your purchase. Let's head now to segment number 2, the call to the pin. Our call to the pin is presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Join the flavor revolution at righteousfelon.com. Use the code STOVE15. That's STOVE15. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. I highly suggest the bootlegging barbecue. It is a phenomenal flavor. It's got a little bit of a kick to it, but it's a barbecue flavor. So good. The jerky is always so tender. Great texture of a jerky. You're going to love it. So righteousfelon.com. Use the code STOVE15 at checkout. All right, Kevin, we are at the All-Star break now. I think there's 2 or 3 games still going on right now, something like that, as we're doing this show. Maybe more than that, but I think just a few. I mean, you look at the breakdown. We talked about a lot last night, but again, maybe their viewers weren't watching last night. So let's start in the American League, and let's start with the American League West. The Astros are 1 game out right now of the Mariners, but both of them on a losing streak. Mariners have lost 3 straight. Astros have lost 2 straight. I think one or both of them playing right now. I don't remember.
No, they're off. Texas has already beat them.
Okay. Texas is now 5 games back, by the way, in this race. We talked about the Astros. We both believe in the Astros, think they're going to get it done when it's all said and done. But Seattle, that pitching staff in Seattle is so incredibly deep. I don't know. What does it take for Seattle? What do they have to add to be able to hold off the Astros? Because I think there has to be something, right?
Yes, they need bats. And they've we talked about Elias. That doesn't work in Seattle, so that's not a consideration. They've got 2 guys that can catch over there, but they need bats. They need outfield bats, and they just need it because their hitting is nothing to get excited about. The only reason why they have that's plus 20 right now, and that's because their pitching staff is holding teams down, and so they've got some excess pitching, so I would see them curling some of that off and go and get themselves a hitter. Julio Rodriguez has not established himself as I thought. My first article of the year was defending him, and so that's not playing very well at this point. But and so they need some outfield bats. So go and get yourself some hitters, and maybe you can hold off the Houston Astros. If they don't, I don't see them winning the division.
So you talked about needing runs scored and bats. They have the lowest runs scored in the division. They're in a division with the Angels and the A's, by the way. Lowest runs scored in the division, which is incredible that they have a plus differential. Because if you're lower scoring than the Angels and the A's and you're still at a plus, that's pretty solid. Their pitching and their defense has been really good. I'm looking real quick. Let's see here. They have more runs than the White Sox, and they have more runs than the Rays, and they have
Miami,
more
I'm
runs
sure.
than the Marlins. And that's it. Those are the only 3 teams that have more runs than. That's not going to work.
No.
Now, Rodriguez has been better. He leads
Well, he
the
couldn't
team
be
in
any
hits.
worse.
Yeah, he leads the team in hits by 32. He has 32 more hits than the next guy on the team.
Well, that's more
that's a negative. Yeah, that's a negative on the team.
That's a negative that he has 32 more hits than anyone else on the team. That's bad.
Cal Raleigh, Ty France are right there. Rojas at third base. Then Lucas Raley, J.P. Crawford, Mitch Haniger.
That's not a winning lineup. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they need help. Like you said, the catcher's not the spot. Cal Raleigh and Mitch Garver.
He homered from both sides of the plate the other day.
Yeah, and if you bring in a Jazz Chisholm, who he's replacing is Jorge Polanco. I mean, I think it'd be an upgrade at the very least. So
absolutely. So I'm not as smart, I'm sure, as the guy that's running the Seattle Mariners, and So I'm sure I'm not telling him anything he hasn't already heard or is aware of. So they've got to get some hitters.
Well, here's the deal. We know Houston's going to be aggressive.
We know
And
that.
Seattle has to
Absolutely.
be. Yeah,
Yes,
Seattle's not. They'll just fall behind because the Astros are going to get better. You're going to see them make a move at first base. And God bless John Singleton, but he's made some highlight plays. But they're going to upgrade first base for sure. And they could upgrade outfield spots. You got Dubon, he can play anywhere. He's a super utility guy. Infield, outfield, doesn't matter. And he's been okay, for them, but they could improve his spot in the outfield. And there's plenty of improvement that can go on in Houston. So, and I think they will. They'll be aggressive. So watch out, Seattle. Houston's sniffing you down.
That's right.
Was pulled within 4.5 games of the Guardians at the break here. We've been talking about the Guardians as the sure thing in the AL Central. What's the chances Minnesota actually makes a run for this division?
Well, they could make a run. They've done it before, but they're not a team, I don't think, that goes out and makes a splashing move. Maybe Cleveland isn't either. But I think Cleveland's a more rounded team. Even though Minnesota's made this move, they're at plus 48, and Cleveland's at plus 87. And so I like Cleveland. I like their team. I like what they're doing over there. And so I think they're going to – and the only thing that you got to be careful about, because Cleveland has 30 wins at home, but they've only played 41 home games.
Yeah,
that's the fewest in the American League. So when that switches around and they start playing more home games in the second half, I think that's going to reveal itself. And so that's going to help them a lot. And so I like that. I like their schedule. So I think Cleveland's going to hold off Minnesota and win this division.
All right. Without looking, all right, so don't cheat. Who leads the Minnesota Twins in hits this year?
Oh, my Lord. I'm going to say, I can't come up with anything else, Byron Buxton.
Okay, well, it's definitely not Byron Buxton.
Okay, I didn't think it was, but okay.
Willie Castro.
Castro. Okay, now there's a guy that we could talk about maybe.
How many times have we mentioned Willie Castro in our show, starting back in February when we started, or January when we started the show, all the way here until July 4th and after? How many times have we mentioned Willie Castro on this show?
I believe this would be the very first.
It's first or second. It's not very much. Now, obviously, Jose Miranda has been on a tear as of late, so he's right there and close. Carlos Correa has had a better season this year. Correa and Miranda are better when it comes to batting average. Miranda leads the team actually in batting average. But Willie Castro, he leads the team in strikeouts, but he also leads the team in hits, which is pretty incredible, if you ask me. So anyways, I say all that to say the Twins can improve as well. And will they is the big question mark there, on the hitting side of things. And they're leading the division in runs scored. So you wouldn't think they're going to do a whole lot there. Pitching is their area. Pablo Lopez has not been at all what we thought he was going to be this year.
No.
Joe Ryan's
that's even more amazing that they're doing as well as they are, given Pablo Lopez's low
he's
production.
A 5.11 ERA. That's bad. Bailey Ober, he's had moments, but he hasn't really been good. Paddock hasn't really been good. He's at 4.99. So when Joe Ryan's your best pitcher, you just can't expect that to maintain. And so I'm with you. I think the Guardians improve in the second half. I think the Twins falter a little bit, although I do think they finish second. I think the Royals aren't going to last. The Tigers, even though they had a heck of a run here as of late too, it's just I don't have any confidence in Kansas City or Detroit.
No.
And I don't think Minnesota catches Cleveland either. I think Cleveland holds it. AL East, we talked a bunch about this last night. Orioles in first. They're a game up again on the Yankees. And after the Yankees lost in a walk-off, I think, today, right?
That I cannot confirm.
I think it was a walk-off.
If you give me a second here, I might be able to confirm that information.
It was a walk-off.
We like to confirm information on this show, by the way.
Yeah, it's a walk-off. Walk-off.
Okay, so
for the Orioles.
bottom of the ninth, Yep. Cedric Mullins, our favorite Oriole, maybe. Right. Double the center. Ryan Mountcastle, the third. Oddly, Rushman scored.
Of course.
Ryan O'Hearn scored. So, yes,
All right.
they won it in a walk-off. Yes.
All right. But who cares? Baltimore Yankees, we know all about them. Red Sox are the team to talk about. 53-42. The 7 out of their last 10 games won. They're plus 44. They are third in pretty much everything in this division right now. They are decent on the road, actually. They're 24-25 at home, but they're 29-17 on the road, and they're 25-30 against teams over 500. So I just can't believe in the Red Sox at the moment. But like we talked about last night is there's a good chance they're going to make moves here as well. What do they got to do to add to actually make them a legit wild card threat?
Well, I think they already are a legitimate wild card threat. So anything that they can bring in to just augment their team, and they'll be fine. I don't think they need to make any big splashy additions, just even though they're Boston, but just a little here and there, maybe some bullpen help, some rotation, and they'll be fine. So they are. We talked about this yesterday. They're a surprise of this division to me, and so just fill in a little. Check Fenway Park. I'm sure there's some cracks that you need some attention. Just go out there, put a little putty around things, and they'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need pitching help. I think they need at least 2 more bats than what they have right now to be a threat, not only to make the playoffs, but to actually do something in the playoffs. Pitching wise, Houck has been pretty solid this year. Crawford's been good. But Bello was the guy that we thought was going to be really good in Baltimore. He's a 5.32 ERA. Pavetta is, that veteran guy that is still around. Now, Bello leads the team in wins. He's 10-5, but he's got a over 5 ERA. It's incredible. Anyways, yeah, I think there's plenty of things that they can add to make them a better team going into it. Real quick, National League, Diamondbacks and Padres. Of those two, which one is more likely to make a run in the second half?
I like we talked about it yesterday as well. I like Arizona, and I think they can make a run. San Diego, and my concern with them is they're not playing especially well at home, and so I not just because I'm a Dodger guy, but they always seems like they always disappoint. And Arizona has, even though they're because they've underperformed so far, but they're right there with the Padres. So just a little bit better, and they've got the offensive pieces out there, and I like what they're doing. So I think Arizona is the team that need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Arizona is more ready at the moment to make a run, so there's less they have to do. San Diego, I think their offense is actually, I kind of like what they're doing there, although the Diamondbacks offense is better. But I think that San Diego, if they made the right move with the pitching staff, then they all of a sudden could be dangerous. But at the moment, I think the Diamondbacks are just more set to make that run. So I would lean that way too. Let's see here. East, we're going to skip over this. Go watch Saturday's show. We talk all about these divisions. Phillies, we're in agreement. They're going to win the division. Braves are going to make the wild card. Maybe the Mets make the wild card. National League, Brewers in the lead. Cardinals, could they catch them? Maybe. We'll see. I'm not really worried about anybody else. I flipped the script a little bit last night and said I think the Reds can make a run at the wild card, but they've got to make pitching additions, especially in the bullpen, which you can do and not have to give up a lot. And if they make the right moves in the bullpen, all of a sudden they become a little bit more dangerous. They're not that far back in the wild card race right now. And they're the only team outside of the Brewers in the plus differential in the division as well. So they can fix that pitching a little bit more, and they'll should be able to contend for a playoff spot in the National League. Okay. Real quick, the council curse. We can't avoid that. I almost forgot it, almost skipped it. Let's take a look at the council curse. All right, so Craig Counsell, we know, backstabber. He baseball gods by doing exactly what they do not want him to do. He goes to Chicago. The baseball gods will not respect it. We told you from the beginning of the year. And there was one caveat I made when talking about this council curse, and that was the baseball gods are not going to punish the people who really didn't have, newer guys, the guys that weren't already in Chicago. And Shota Imanaga has been the one highlight for Chicago, so much so that he is the only Chicago Cubs player in the All-Star game. Just to clarify, baseball, to not embarrass a team, has one representative from every team in the All-Star game. The Chicago Cubs did not earn their way there. The baseball had pity on Chicago and allows Shota Imanaga into the All-Star game, just like they do for the Los Angeles Angels, the Chicago White Sox, the Oakland A's, the Washington Nationals, the Colorado Rockies, and let's go ahead and put the Chicago Cubs right there with those teams. Last place in the division, only one representative in the All-Star game. The council curse strikes again. Kevin, any comments on the council curse this week?
Maybe the baseball gods need to, buck up a little bit, because they swept the Orioles and they won 2 out of 4 over against the Cardinals. Even though it was kind of cool seeing them get swept in a doubleheader yesterday, but all of their players have taken a step back. All of them. Dansby Swanson, he's one of the targets we could mention that would be head and shoulders, that would be right there to get hit by lightning. And Bellinger is another one of them, and Ian Happ. So none of them have performed up. Even Shota has, had a couple of knocks against him. He certainly deserves to be there over anybody from the Angels or White Sox or Marlins or whomever else you want to get into. But so it's this whole division, as we talked about, has been something else to watch, because we didn't know what to make of it, and we still don't. Yeah. So,
well, a wise man once said
on this division.
A wise man once said, "You can't lose them all." So there you go. That's the Cubs mantra this year. You can't lose them all. So there you go.
Okay.
All right. This segment's presented by Righteous Felon Jerky, righteousfelon.com. Use the code STOVE15 to check out. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. Let's talk some waiver wire moves now. And our final segment we call the Fantasy Focus. Fantasy Focus is presented by BellyUpFantasySports.com, your one-stop shop for all things fantasy sports. It's the place where you can find all of Kevin Wilson's articles as well. This is kind of a weird week for me, Kev, because with the All-Star break, even though we've got games at the end of the week, I don't feel like there's going to be a ton of movement going on rosters over the next couple of days, because a lot of times the way we're moving guys is we're streaming them. We're playing guys that are actually playing, and those kinds of things. No one's playing for the next couple days, but let's go ahead and look at some guys that will be up for consideration here in the coming days for the waiver. Let's go with our drops first, and let's just roll through the drops. So you just give me the list of your drops.
All right. So just to emphasize, the people that might be watching, this is a 10-team league we're in. Mm-hmm. So that's always pertinent to say. And right from the beginning of the year, if you're in a 20-team league, you're probably not dropping a whole lot of people. But 10 teams, we can play around the edges a little bit. And so the players that I'm going to first go with the Dodger. I'm sorry, Bobby Miller. Okay, he's not even on a major league roster. He was optioned to AAA. He's got to go. And one of the players that surprised us early on was David Fry, because he plays all over the place. But and he's at 48.2%, but he's 0 for his last 20. Okay, and then right before that, he went 3 for 7. So players were like, "Oh, yay, maybe he's come." No, he was 0 for 9 before that. So this is a pretty projected slump that we got going on, and this is what he's done: 0, -1, 0, 1, -1, -1, -1, 0. We always talk about how you play different positions. That's always a bond in fantasy, but you got to get on base to make any of that count. And so I didn't want to bring his name up, but he's forced me to do it. If on a 10-man league, I'm sure there's got to be a guy out there that can be more valuable than him. Another guy I didn't want to bring up, Mackenzie Gore, has been gored of late, if you will. He was pitching extremely well. You should have had him on your team, but now it just hasn't been working out. It last 9 earned runs and 8 innings. It isn't working out well. Maybe he'll turn around, but especially when he only got 3 days at the end of this, who knows if he'll even pitch in this next 3, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I got him. And last week I talked about how Jose Miranda was a dead red add to your fantasy team. Well, guess what? He turned right around and went on the IL with a back strain.
Give it up.
No, I'm not. If you've got room on your IL, put him there.
Okay.
But who's got room on their IL? Who? Almost nobody. So if you don't have room on your IL, unless there's an obvious drop on your IL, then I'm not going to keep him on my active roster.
Sure.
Just to keep him there. So unless you can put him in your IL, he's a player that stabbed me last week and was personally responsible for my loss last week. And I was so high on him, I couldn't believe it. But now he's on the IL, and if you don't have a spot for him, go ahead and drop him.
All right, so I think you can get value out of Jose Miranda right now. I say you trade him. If you don't have the room on the roster, I think you try to make a move and trade him for somebody. I think he is still he's too sexy right now in fantasy baseball, just the drop, in my opinion. And I'd say the same thing about Fry. I know what the stats say, and I agree with you. He couldn't be on my roster right now, but I think his name is still out there in the fantasy world enough that there's someone in your league who will trade you for him, and they will give you something of value for him as well. I think both Fry and Miranda are guys that you can trade. And I saw Fry's name as I was looking through the stats too, and I said, man, I cannot believe he has dropped off this much. That being said, Kevin, I think if you drop him, you'll see someone pick him up pretty fast, and I think you can get value out of them. I say trade those guys versus drop those guys. Either way, they probably need to be off your roster. I say that I might be a little bit more patient with Fry, being that the team that he's on, they're getting ready to have this time off. He's going to get a breather. He's going to get a break. I might give him another week, honestly, to see if he picks it back up after the break. I would be worried that if I let go of him, it's going to come back to bite me. So I think I would hold on to Fry. I agree. I give him a week after the All-Star break to see what it looks like. And if it's still bad, then it's time to cut him loose, either trade him or drop him, either one. But I look at my drops, Kevin. I've got 3 guys, and all of them are pretty much lower owned in leagues too. They're not guys that a lot of teams have. Colton Cowser in Baltimore has been really not good. Thairo Estrada in San Francisco, that second base shortstop eligibility is nice, but like you said, it's only nice when they're doing something with it, and he is not. And then Detroit pitcher Kenta Maeda is just it's just not been pretty for him. I think he's got negative in his last 2 games. So get rid of those guys.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk ads. I'm going to surprise you with this one, Kevin, I think, at the least. And he's owned in only 9.1% of leagues.
Okay.
He is only eligible at one position. It's third base.
Okay.
My buddy Kevin Wilson told us before the season this guy was going to be phenomenal. And it took until mid-July for him to be phenomenal. But Eugenio Suarez has awoken. He is a phoenix rising from the ashes. He says, don't forget about me. I am here. And Eugenio Suarez is now fantasy relevant and worth having on your team if you need a third baseman. That's all he can do for you is third base. So if you don't have that spot open, don't waste your time. But he has been on a tear as of late. And I know that it'll make you very happy if he could turn things around and change the way we're looking at your preseason take on Eugenio Suarez.
All right. So hopefully he can continue the journey to, relevance So I would be very happy about that. So,
and let me
I
give, I'm
saw
sorry,
that
let me
he
give you the
did that.
numbers. I apologize. On Eugenio Suarez right now in the last, let's see here. Oh, I'm in the wrong league. Of course I am. I was pulled it up and all it gave me was not what I was looking for. But Eugenio Suarez, as of late, the last week, especially, really the last 2 weeks, he has against Toronto, 5 points, 8 points. He had a negative 1 point there. Against Atlanta, 17 points over 3 games. So the last 2 series he's had have been really solid. Against San Diego, he threw up a 13-point night as well. I think he's back to where he needs to be, Kevin, to be back on rosters again.
And as you mentioned, nothing makes me more ecstatic than Eugenio Suarez. And we're talking about him in July because he was underneath the desert sands not too long ago.
Right. All right, who you got?
Okay, so there's a couple of guys that might be a little bit of surprise, but I'm going to go with Spencer Horwitz of the Detroit Tigers. Okay, first and second baseman, he's at 7.2% rostered, but hitting 320. Okay, and hits 8 out of his last 10 games, and he's qualified at first and second base. So unlike some of these other guys we were talking about earlier, he's got some multi-position eligibility and hitting the baseball. So if you're looking for first base or second base, then that's a guy I would turn to.
Just to clarify, he's at Toronto is where he is.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, Toronto.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking there. Okay, Toronto. Well, either way, okay, he's definitely an ad player. I like him. And another player that might be a surprise, I'm going to go to the Chicago White Sox. I don't know, maybe I'm dehydrated. I've got water here, okay? But that player is Drew Thorpe.
Okay.
He's at 10.1% rostered, but he's 3-1 with a 3.58 ERA and a 1.04 WHIP. Last 3, he's gone. Let's see, 6, 6, 6. He's got 6 innings pitched in 3 of his last 4 games. So, therefore, and if any of these trades that we talked about go as Eric Fed is gone, if Fetty is gone, and Crochet gets traded, he goes up to the top of that rotation. Yeah. And so right now, he's at 10% rostered. So there's probably not a better time if you're looking for pitching to go out and get him.
I got a pitcher too, Kevin. It's a guy I actually fell in love with last year and was hoping he'd start the year off well. He did not. But he's only 2.3% owned, and it's the Arizona Diamondbacks' Ryan Nelson. He's 6-6 on the year, only 59 strikeouts, 4.98 ERA. You say, well, why do I want that guy? Well, in 4 of his last 6 starts, he's had 19 or more fantasy points. He had 1 bad outing on May the 26th against Minnesota. But in the last 3 starts, he went 5 innings, 3 Ks, 1 earned run, 6.2 innings, 5 Ks, 1 earned run. And against Toronto, he went 7 innings, 5 strikeouts. He did allow 3 earned runs, but still got you 19 fantasy points. We both agree that we think Arizona is going to have a good second half of the season. He's on the back end of that rotation. But he's started to perform really well. Last year, he had moments last year that were really good, and I see him as a perfect streaming pitcher right now as well in fantasy baseball. So you have to keep an eye on. They don't have his next matchup out yet, so I'm not sure who he's going up against next. But I like Ryan Nelson. I like Arizona. I think we're going to see some good things out of them.
All right, so I'm going to piggyback off of that because I've got an Arizona pitcher as well. Okay. He's not nearly as available.
Is it Brandon Pfaadt again?
It would be indeed Brandon. Okay, at 21.1% rostered. Okay, he pitched against Atlanta. Okay, and pitched well. So 6 innings, no runs, 3 hits. So he goes right to the list. And another player whom I am absolutely positive on is on Detroit Tigers. Otherwise, because I was wrong earlier, but that's Reese Olson.
Okay.
He's at 23.7% rostered, so he's not nearly as available. But if he is, this is what he's done. In his last 6 starts, he's gone into the 6th inning in all of them. So he gives you quality starts, and this is out of his last 5 starts. This is his fantasy production: 23, 16, 15, 21, or 20 rather, 10. So he will give you some positive, and if he's available, and even though Detroit's turned things around a little bit, but he's a guy that you wouldn't have to worry. And this is a guy that started like, what was it, 1-6 or something, and even though his ERA is 3.30, and he's only won 4 games, but 3 of those have come in like the last couple of weeks. So he is now winning games, which was the problem with him earlier. But so I really, really, really like Reese Olson if he's available. We don't know who he's pitching against either, but if you who doesn't need starting pitching? Reese Olson, If he's available, go get him.
Man, if I should have kept a count of how many times you've mentioned Brandon Pfaadt this year. I mean, you've fallen in love with Brandon Pfaadt, and
it's been more in the few. So
he's had some good starts. I'm going to bring up a guy that I brought up about, I think, two weeks ago, but he's still only 3.9% owned. The Toronto pitcher, Yariel Rodriguez. I think especially if they make some moves and they lose one of their other guys, that kind of moves his opportunity up a bit. He's only made 3 starts, but in those 3 starts, he's only allowed 3 earned runs. He's also 19 strikeouts, only 7 walks to those 19 strikeouts as well. I just really like his young arm. He was a relief pitcher to start the year. He started and been in relief. He's kind of went back and forth a little bit, but it looks like he's kind of locked in right now. And I like him as a guy that you can bring in. If you're in a Yahoo league where you can position them in relief pitchers or starting pitcher slots, well, he can qualify you as a relief pitcher too, so he doesn't take up one of those starting pitcher spots. That being said, though, I like Yariel Rodriguez. I think his opportunity gets better here with the trades coming up as well. Maybe he gets traded. I don't think he does, but if you lose a Bassett or a Kikuchi, he moves up in that rotation a little bit. Better opportunity, and I think will be a solid fantasy pitcher for you as well. So there's my repeat guy in Yariel Rodriguez. I haven't mentioned him quite as much as Brandon Pfaadt's been mentioned on this show, but maybe by the end of the season he'll catch up.
All right, so one more guy. I'm going to return to the AL Central, and Michael Wacha, Kansas City Royals.
Wacha.
He's at 13.7% rostered. All right, he's got 6-6 with the 3.83 ERA. Now this is pretty incredible stat right here. He's gone into the 5th inning, completed 5th innings, 9 straight starts. That might be one of the longest streaks that you'll find in the major leagues right now. I cannot confirm that information at the present, but 5 innings, 9 straight starts. He's pitched in the 6th inning or later 7 times in that stretch. So this is a guy that's going to give you innings. He's going to give you points, and we don't know what he, and this is what he's done. Okay. 14, 20, 15, 15, 18. All positive, okay? And so I like what he's doing down there. I think he's not going to have a fall off. He's a veteran guy, so I like him going in the second half a lot.
Very good. Very good. A couple things about our fantasy league that we've got going on here at Belly Up Sports. We have we're in some tight races right now. Chase Thornton and Dan D'Amico sit in first place. They're the 2 defending champs. Dan won our first year. Chase won last year. I'm currently in 3rd, but if things stay the same, I might get up to 2nd this week, catching up to Dan. So I've got an easy matchup this week, and it'll end next Sunday. But I've got an easy matchup, so I'll get my 10th straight win, by the way, for the Sports Stoves Brewing the Council Curse team in our fantasy baseball team. Dan is currently down by about 40 points to our fearless leader, Mike Brown. And so we'll see if that holds or not. Dan will probably make a comeback, but we'll see. Chase is dominating Brent Radlinsky, which everyone has this season except for once. Dad is blowing out Ryan Capalbo, and rightfully so. And Kevin, you're currently down 46 points to Nathan Nguyen, our most improved fantasy player of the year. But you still got 3 days to make it up for there. If you lose to Nate this week, you'll only be one game up on Nate for the playoff spot there. And if Mike wins too, you'll only be one game up on Mike too. So are you feeling the pressure of fantasy baseball right now?
Well, I am feeling the pressure because these last 2 weeks were supposed to be weeks that I would cruise to victories. But and when you look at what Mike is doing, is very impressive because he didn't throw, the whole tablet into the garbage and say, I'm not doing this anymore. And he stayed right in it. And so Nathan is the same way. And so it's going to be, I've already had more losses this year than ever. And that's not like I just started playing fantasy baseball. This is the most losses I've ever had so far. We're only halfway through. So it's been when you lose guys like Spencer Strider and some of the other players that I've had, go down. And so, but nobody cries, and I'm not crying, and I'm not asking for anybody to cry. Okay. But so I'm going to have to be on the stick. And we talked with Nathan. We talked about how he's in the playoffs already, and he's responded. So I'm going to have to do the same thing.
You're taking a hit, but you're doing it for the program. We wanted to make sure we had a guy that was fighting to make the playoffs. And so that for content reasons, that's the only reason that Kevin's is on the bubble right now. He's doing it just strictly for the show, and we appreciate that, Kevin. Your sacrifice is noted.
That's what I'm here for.
BellyUpFantasySports.com is where you can find Kevin's articles. Kevin, anything planned for the All-Star week?
Well, there's an article that you can be real sure is going to get dropped tomorrow. It's going to mirror what we've discussed here today, some trade targets. So, and I'll put that in writing. And you can go to the Belly Up Fantasy site. I've got an article that I wrote based off of last week with my all-star starters. And then I got an article before that where I review the first half of the baseball season in fantasy. So there are quite a bit of articles right there. You can always find articles from me. They're starting to add on some little bit more fantasy stock, so to speak. So get over there to the Bail Out Fantasy website. I'm sure you'll find you'll see some things that you'll like there.
Very good. And of course, fantasy football is quickly approaching, so you can catch Kevin talking a lot of fantasy football in the coming months as well. For my stuff, we'll be back. Let's see here tomorrow night, Sports Stove Local Hour covering EKU sports. We've got the wide receiver coach and the cornerback coach coming on the show tomorrow night. Plus, cornerback Trey Gooden is going to join us as well. So tune in. It's a lot of fun. I got a football player that co-hosts with me. He's a senior at EKU. And so there's a lot of just fun insight about college sports and college football specifically. So tune into that. Wednesday night, Dad will join me. We start our NFL preview. We're going division by division there as well with some fun things I think you'll like. So tune in Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. We are covering the East divisions this week, both in the AFC and the NFC. So a lot of fun things going down there. And then, of course, next Sunday, we'll be back to talk more fantasy baseball at post All-Star weekend and talking about what is ahead for the rest of the season as well.
Right. And I would be doing a great disservice because yesterday I was on the with Ryan on a No Credentials Required show. And so you can get on YouTube and go to the Belly Up regular side of things. If you want to find that episode over there, we discussed the top 5 and bottom 5 quarterback rooms in the NFL. So that's, right now, this week, they're getting ready to open up training camps. So there's and it's real football content right there. We talk about Joe Burrow, and we talk about Ryan's insistence that the American men's basketball team will not medal, which I think is absolutely insane. and Dustin and I both debated him on that subject. So you'll definitely want to get over there and check that out. It's a quality show. I like it a lot, and so I appreciated them asking me to be on it. And of course, we've talked about it many times, but last night, this baseball super show, which we talk about real baseball only, and that's available on the regular side of Belly Up as well. So there's content aplenty.
Yeah, we took a nice swing at Canada last night as well.
That's right.
That show.
We sure did. We sure did do that.
All right, Kevin Wilson. You can follow him on Twitter, Kevin62 WILSEA. You can follow me at Sports Stove on Twitter and Instagram as well. We sure appreciate you tuning in tonight. Those that commented as well, thank you. Sorry we didn't get to all your questions and thoughts today, but come back next week. We'll try our best to do just that. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.
Have a great week.